Fair warning, this show contains strong language and adult themes from time to time. Sorry, Jerry can't help it.
Sick Boy Wolfgang Productions presents The Offering with Jerry Horror. A deep dive into the history of film and its filmmakers. Mostly horror, always genre.
Need more for your gore decor? HauntedProps.com has been a leading online Halloween retailer since 2006. And now, the company has opened the first and only year-round Halloween showroom on Long Island. The entire store is decorated and themed with immersive scenes. Yes, the whole thing is set up like a walk-through haunted attraction, and you're literally shopping in a haunted house. They've got gore props, haunted house props, costumes, masks, makeup, and did someone say animatronics? They've got those too. Designed to last and built to scare. Do you need legit looking props for your film set or photo shoot? HauntedProps.com offers consumer grade and professional grade props. They've got something scary for any budget. Here's an idea. You need a location for your event? Haunted Props is a fantastic spot for flea markets, music festivals, carnivals, a haunted house obviously, and any outdoor event you can dream of. Do yourself a favor. Go to the store in Manorville, Long Island, or order off the website, hauntedprops.com, where you can buy what scares you. Folks, I gotta tell you about Mailbox Movies. Remember the good old days? Back when Netflix would actually deliver physical media to your mailbox? Do you remember those days? I do. I love them. How often do you find yourself reminiscing about those trips to your local video store, sifting through every single collection, discovering a movie treasure that you've never seen before? If niche is your knack, then Mailbox Movies is the DVD delivery service for you. With simple online ordering and speedy DVD delivery right to your front door, Mailbox Movies has unbeatable prices that will give you more screams for your buck. Now remember, okay? Just remember, because you're going to need this. Use the code JerryHorror for 50% off your first month. Take a shot. 50% off? How can you not? Don't settle for less. Get the best in horror delivered to your door. Again, that promo code for 50% off is JerryHorror. Head on over to mailboxmovies.com and start your own terrifying movie marathon today. Welcome to The Offering with me, your host, Jerry Horror. Each week we take a deep dive into the history of film and filmmakers. Mostly horror, always genre. Please take a moment to subscribe to our show wherever you find your favorite podcast to stay up to date on future episodes. Coming up, initially Wes Craven pitched this film as a television series. This movie was made as a vendetta against New Line Cinema over the lack of profit sharing that Wes Craven had received from the Elm Street films. Iggy Pop, Dangerous Toys, and Megadeth were recruited by the lead singer of Kiss, Paul Stanley, to give this film a more metal edge. Stay tuned, you're not going to want to miss this. Ladies and gentlemen, friends beyond the binary, this is The Offering with your host, me, Jerry Horror. How you doing, folks? Good to see you. Good to see you. Glad everybody showed up today. Woo, another beautiful October day. Oh, wow, here we are. It is, oh man, we are deep. That's it. Like this is, like when you first fall in love and like, oh man, I really need to be with this person. That's where you're at with Halloween. It's all building up. It's all building up. You got Jack Skellington tattooed on your arm. You got your pumpkin spice latte. Oh man, new issue of Fangoria. Wow, it's a great time to be a big Halloween horror head. I love this time of year. Nothing better than knowing that there is going to be a copious amount of fun size candy. And just everywhere. It's crazy because people always take the candy and they're like, we got too much candy in the house. Or you've got the people that are like, I buy M&Ms because I like M&Ms, and if the kids don't show up, fuck them, I eat them. And it's like, okay, that's a strategy. One way or the other, I feel like every year I get free candy. Somebody gives me candy. The worst thing that ever happened to me in the free candy game Somebody, it was one of my neighbors, gave me a 6-pound bag of Sour Patch Kids. 6 fucking pounds. This is like a Costco bag. Dude, do you know what that really is? Like when you get 6 pounds of Sour Patch Kids, #1 candy in New York, #1 selling, most popular. I ate these things. And then one night, either I didn't have any food in the house or I was like, I'm not going out. I'm like, I'm not doing this. And I was really high because you knew that's how this started. So I'm high as shit. And I'm like, all right, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to eat like 3 pounds of these. My tongue, I thought I was going to have to go to the hospital. The Sour Patch Kids, I thought my tongue was going to fall off. It was so, because it's so sour that there's like that absorbic acid or whatever it is, citric acid, and it burns your tongue if you eat too many of them. Oh man, it was so bad. I tasted Sour Patch Kids on my tongue for like a day or two afterwards. I wanted to puke. It was terrible. I guess the moral of this story is that too much of a good thing, anything, is a bad thing. Ooh, yeah. So most people, they get into the Halloween spirit in different ways. Back in the day, people fondly remember AMC Fear Fest, where they would just be airing the horror movies. You could see Halloween 4 and 5 3,000 times. And that's what killed Halloween 4 and 5 for me. AMC Fear Fest just showed them, oh my God, ad nauseum. It was like, here we are in progress on Halloween 5, and it's Donald Pleasance. Okay, I'll fucking turn it on. And you have a whole, as I spoke about in the Van Helsing episode, sick plug, you have a whole generation of kids that grew up watching AMC Fear Fest. So there's like all these movies that they used to show in those blocks, and they have a fond place in their heart for those movies. That's fine. That's fine. We've talked about it before. Nostalgia is not a bad thing. Too much nostalgia, that's a bad thing. You can't do that. You don't want to give in to that. It's crazy. I saw a costume for the cat. It's like, I don't know, Mega Man had a dog named Rush, and he also had a cat. I didn't know he had a cat. I think the girl version of Mega Man. Sorry if I'm offending any Capcom fans out there and I don't know the illustrious lore of Mega Man. Oh, sorry. Yeah, so the girl had a cat, and there's a costume. You can get it on Amazon right now. And I swear to God, my cat Brooklyn she'd be like, that's it. One day I come there, I get like a Dear John note from the cat. Like, this isn't working out. It's not. I'm sorry. And then I see her looking back, and she's got like 2 little suitcases, looks back at me, and then just keeps walking. And I'm like, wow. Okay, look, I understand it's cute. You're like, oh, this year we're going to take the dog and we're going to make him Chewbacca. Listen, man, maybe you like dressing up, but that dog can't speak English. That cat, that iguana, whatever you're dressing up your fish. You people are weirdos. You shouldn't be. I'm getting skeezed out that you're listening to this right now. If you've got a cool dog, I mean, you got a real cool dog, and the dog's like, I'll put on the fucking Yoda costume. Cool. That's totally cool. But if you have to hold this animal down and put vampire fangs or whatever the hell you're going to do, you dye the dog pink. Listen, you people are freaks. You shouldn't do this to animals. You shouldn't. It's like in Scrooge when Bill Murray's like, just staple the antlers onto the mice. And that's what it reminds me of. It's like you're torturing these poor animals by dressing them up. But it's cute. There's no way Brooklyn's putting on that Mega Man costume thing. It's not happening. But there is a world where I take 1 million photos and I post them online. And I'm like, look, she's saving the day, or whatever Mega Man really does. Not quite sure. I wonder if Mega Man has a day job. He's an android boy. Basically, Mega Man is a ripoff of Astro Boy, except it's a side-scrolling shooter. Mega Man 2, the best in the series. Just sorry to go off on a tangent about Mega Man 2, but if we're here, I'm here, you're here. The Super Nintendo ones, the Mega Man X games, ooh, bangers. Bangers, all of them. So I hope that you're enjoying spooky season and you're getting into the mood. You've got your candles from Knows Best. They've always got some crazy Halloween, and they're super limited edition. If you don't get them in time, you're not going to have whatever they smell like. I don't know, because they don't. Look, my sister owns Knows Best, and she hasn't told me. I'm like, so what are the Halloween candles this year? And she's like, well, I can't tell you. I'm like, so now I can't even read spoilers about candles. And that's a problem too. I think we've gotten past it. People now, it's not as bad with the spoilers. People are just like, you can't be fishing around. This year we had the big summer movie was Deadpool and Wolverine. People were cool about it. They didn't spoil it. There weren't things, of course there's some dicks, but let's just say this. When you're on social media, if there's people that are dicks, just unfriend them. Just block them. I don't even have the time for the discourse. Like, they're going to argue with you. I've seen these rants on X, The Offering, WJH on X. I've seen these rants, and it's like, well, you spoiled the movie, and you showed X, and blah, 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 blah. And it's like, all right, come on. Sometimes it's like one of those things, and I'm not saying, but like, if you're in the bad part of town at a certain time, you know where you are. You know what you're getting into, and that's what it is with these spoilers. Stop following those sites. Stop following the people that are spoiling. Block them. But you don't need to write a 14-page tirade why the Wolfman was spoiled for you. Like, and then he became the Wolfman. Oh my God. Yes, that's the title of the film. That's what was going to happen. It's not a big mystery, you dope. Wow. Sorry, folks. Man, speaking of which, have we got a real barn burner for you today? Oh my God. This is a good one. I think this film was ahead of its time. That's between you and me. But I have a lot of feelings. There's a lot of feelings, and there's even a very personal story that I have to share with you today. But you're not going to find out unless you stay tuned till after the break. So strap in, make that popcorn, drink that Kool-Aid, get your goodies out. It's time for The Offering. Where were you in 1989? Were you preparing for the bat? I was. Were you listening to Paula Abdul? I was, because I'm a nerd. This is Shocker 1989, folks. And if you were there, you were there.
We are here today to bear witness to the execution of Horace Pinker, whose unspeakable atrocities have horrified the people of this great state. He stands convicted of 52 counts of aggravated assault, 23 counts of armed robbery, and 37 counts of murder in the first degree. Prisoner, have any final words?
Yeah. No more Mr. Nice Guy.
I don't think he's dead. Contact. He's among you!
Now, Wes Craven brings you his greatest creation.
No more!
Shocker.
They pumped a ton of money into the campaign for this movie. I watched a couple of commercials. Shout Factory did a really great Blu-ray on this movie. They've got a 4K that's out now. I don't have the 4K. Shout Factory, if you're listening, please start sending us free movies. I will review them. I will watch them. I will speak to them to my audience. To my audience, don't buy anything yet. Don't buy it yet until they sponsor the show. So they've got a great Blu-ray, and it's got print ads. It's got radio spots. I miss those old radio spots. The old radio spots that were like, Shocker, coming, like they would do the movie. They'd be like, it's the scariest movie of the year. And you'd be like, wow, that sounds pretty scary. And then you would get the ads on the radio and on TV for like the soundtracks. It's like the Crow soundtrack featuring Stone Temple Pilots, 9 Inch Nails. And they would play you like 5 seconds of every song, like time, and then just jump to the next song. Oh man, I miss those days. And that's, if you grew up during this era, you probably miss those days too, because this was the time of Singles and Club MTV, MTV Spring Break, Yo MTV Raps, Headbangers Ball. There was a Shocker Headbangers Ball tie-in, which I found always impressive. It was a time, man. If you were there, shout out. You understand what this is. It's very specific growing up with this movie. But if you watch the ads, every ad, and then they did a TV, like the making of, every other time you see something is from the director of Nightmare on Elm Street, from the horror master who brought you Freddy Krueger. In that special, which is on the Blu-ray, that is the half-hour like making of, that was probably on HBO or something, they literally say, A, horror master. Fine, he's earned that. But every other sentence is the daddy of Freddy Krueger. The daddy. It's just like, whatever, man. So I would say that in the Shocker marketing, there is no less than like 3 or 4 Freddy Krueger references. And we're going to get to why that is. I'm going to go off on a little bit of a rant here. Doing research for this episode, I noticed on the IMDb that Wes Craven's filmography is clogged up with Elm Street fan films. And I'm just saying, dude, you make your fucking fan film. You do whatever it is you want to do, but do not edit Wes Craven's filmography and put, do you know what's in there? Do you know what's in there? A Nightmare on Vape Street. Wes Craven had nothing to fucking do with A Nightmare on Vape Street. They've done all these sequels. They just did one to the Dream Child. They've got the original kid. It's so stupid, man. Like, how the fuck are you, like, and everything, all of the references to them say characters created by Wes Craven. Dude, Wes Craven had nothing to do with your shitty fan film. Like, leave it off there. So, before you even get to the last film he made, which was My Soul to Take, you're going to see about 25 fan films that have nothing to, well, they're all, and most of them, 95% of them, they're Freddy fan films. They're Elm Street fan films. You want to credit, if you want to say like, okay, if you use archival footage of Wes Craven and he's speaking about something, dude, fine, put your documentary, but like put some fucking respect on this man's name. You have no reason that any of these fan films should be on his filmography. If you're thinking, well, this is our way of keeping Wes alive. Well, guess what? Wes is dead and you need to stop doing this shit, because I found it so upsetting that I had to go through all these various sources and say like, oh wait, he didn't direct any of these. These are just bullshit. These are like made up movies. They're non-existence. That's it. I'm going to leave it at that. I know that I got some heat over the whole fan film thing. I don't think they're inherently bad. I think they're a great exercise. I think if you're a young person, if you just want to get out there and try your shit, that's fine. But don't invest $250,000 into your fan film, please. So where was our old pal Wes Craven? We did the Scream movies. We did all kinds of stuff. We did Curse. We did a lot of Wes Craven. So I think it's always good to catch up with him at these different, it's always a snapshot. It's a Polaroid of like where this guy was in his career. It's kind of like this. New Line Cinema was dropping The Dream Child. Craven was pissed at New Line because the owner, Bob Shea, owed him a lot of money in residuals. And he felt like he created Freddy Krueger, which he did, and that they hoard the character out. Like he's on bubblegum now. This is, again, if you go back and listen to the When Freddy Krueger Ruled the World, sick plug, you go back and listen to that episode, you realize that he is this omnipresent force in culture. Craven didn't like that. A, because he's not getting any money. Because he's probably like his kids are like, hey, look, Dad, there's Freddy bubblegum. He's like, I didn't get a fucking check for that. And rightfully so. If you create something, you know, Wes Craven's not out here making fan films. Wes Craven presents Shadow of the Bat, a Batman, a Dark Knight fantasy. So he's pissed. He really is, you know, and rightfully so. He's like, I need to get paid for this. Eventually, him and Bob Shea do come to an agreement, and Wes Craven gets all his money, and it all gets worked out, and the estate still gets money. So thank God, knock on wood, that happened. So I think the problem with Shocker, the fundamental issue, Wes said during an interview that he created Horace Pinker, our titular villain of this film, to kill Freddy Krueger. The verbatim, that's what he said. There's even some marketing materials that are like, there's one thing that Freddy's afraid of, and it's Horace Pinker. Universal was like, hey, we want that Elm Street money, and that's what's hot right now with the kids, all these big VFX movies. We want a piece of that pie. Hey, Wes, can you make us a new Freddy Krueger? And Wes said, I sure can. But it's a double-edged sword, because when you create something new that people love, and then you're the one to destroy it, it doesn't work that way. Once you breathe life into one of these creations and it takes over the pop culture zeitgeist the way that Freddy Krueger did, you ain't killing it, dude. It's alive and well, and it's living rent-free in all the heads of the fans. He did Deadly Friend, which was a Universal joint. He did 5 episodes of the new Twilight Zone show, which I really liked. That Twilight Zone show on CBS back in the day, in the 80s, that was good shit. He even directed an episode of The Magical World of Disney, a tour through Disneyland. In 88, he does The Serpent and the Rainbow, which is successful critically, as well as being regarded as a horror classic. It's one of his best films. I recommend The Serpent and the Rainbow. And also it cemented him as the master of horror. People like, yo, you can't fuck with this guy. Like, yeah, I don't know if he can do a musical, but he's pretty good at these horror movies. Enter John Carpenter. John Carpenter had this deal with Universal. Previous episode, They Live, sick plug, they talked about, okay, so if the Carpenter movie doesn't become a big box office hit, it will do its number on VHS. And again, that's something that we've brought up a lot, like this season and last season, is like just how profitable that home video market was. It was just a license to print money. What ends up happening is Carpenter has this deal with Universal. He's doing like Memoirs of an Invisible Man with Chevy Chase, and he's just he's just, so what am I doing? You know, this is kind of when he starts to fall off in the late 80s. So he contractually owed Universal 4 movies. And he's like, all right. He's like, I'll give back the money and just, like he literally was going to give Universal back the money and say, I don't want to do these. He runs into Wes, and Wes was like, listen, I'm going through a divorce right now. It sucks. He's like, I've got custody of the kids. It's a bad situation. And he's like, you know, I'm doing The Magical World of Disney. I'm doing stuff like that just so I can, you know, pay the mortgage. And John says, I've got an idea. And wouldn't you know, that old crafty stoner John Carpenter goes to Universal with Wes Craven, and he says, listen, I'm done. I think I'm going to take a little break from filmmaking. The other 4 pictures on my contract, can Wes take them over? So the Universal heads get together, and I guess they're thinking like, well, Wes Craven performs really well in VHS too. What we'll do is we'll give Wes, and this is Wes Craven always getting fucked by somebody. It's like the story of his life. They say, we'll give him less money than John for these productions, and we'll still get 4 movies that are going to perform on VHS, and we'll sell them to cable, and we'll make a shitload of money anyway. So they came back to the both of them. They said, yes, this is fine. We will swap out the contract. We'll sign it tomorrow. Wes Craven will reinvigorate our horror film department, or whatever you want to call it. Yeah, just like that, Wes Craven had a 4-picture go deal at Universal. Most importantly, Universal was confident that they would make their money back in spades, and it kind of worked. I want to say early on, Wes had heard this story, and this is much like, you know, Freddy Krueger and where that came from. He heard this story about a guy who was a television repairman who was living in his van, and what he would do is he would kidnap women and then torture them, rape them, keep them in the van. And this went on for like 2 or 3 years with different women. And eventually he got caught. The further they went into the crimes and the level of what this guy was doing was just insane. So he said to himself, he's like, all right, he's like, TV repairman. How about this guy's a TV, you know, the last Freddy was a janitor. Why can't this guy, you know? So he says, okay, we're going to make him a TV repairman. One of the reasons that this film is so ahead of its time is that Wes Craven felt that and this was really based on stuff like CNN, which were these 24-hour news networks that were new at the time. He said, he's like, there's violence. There is utter violence, despair in our face at all times. And if you were growing up in the 80s and you remember, you know, all the stuff like Geraldo Rivera and all these reports, we ended up watching like Desert Storm live on CNN, seeing them with the night vision firing the missiles. Violence was, you know, people complain about social media today, but everybody was like, oh, all day, every day, 24 hours, the misery of the world is being broadcast. And Wes starts concocting something here, and he's like, wait a sec. All right, what about a supernatural villain who can go into TVs and he can take people over? It's kind of like Freddy. He kind of Freddy goes into dreams. Why can't this guy go into the TV? Wes wrote this original draft of Shocker. It would have been like a $50-60 million film because he had all kinds of crazy stuff. There was a much more comedic tone in certain parts where Horace Pinker, our serial killer, he travels through TV. Like, he shows up in Donna Reed, he shows up in all these different things, and he's killing everybody. I think that would have been a fun place to take this character. But Universal was like, no, we're we're not spending $60 million, Wes. You're tripping. You're absolutely tripping. That's, I can assure you, that's not going to happen. Basically, after realizing that his $60 million script was going to be cut down to a much smaller number, they said, look, Wes, we'll give you $12 million. And he said, I'll make a deal with you, Universal Studios. If you give me $5 million, will you leave me alone? And they said, yeah, for $5 million, for what this movie will make on VHS, yes, we will leave you totally alone. So Wes Craven takes this on, and he's like, all right. He's like, well, I didn't get the big budget, but I can make this the way that I want. So he shot this movie in like 10 weeks. It was basically achieved by having a small crew and little-known actors. And that was really what he wanted. He wanted something where he didn't have to deal with studio interference. In fact, they went and they shot most of this movie in the Midwest because it was a way for him to not be a part of the Hollywood system. And I applaud that. I totally get it. He gets actor Peter Berg. He was casted very early on. Everybody knows Peter Berg. He directed a bunch of Mark Wahlberg movies. He did Patriot Day, Spencer Confidential. He's directed The Rundown. He was a reoccurring character on Entourage, Friday Night Lights. What was cool was Peter Berg, even early on, really, he wanted to be a director. So people were always saying, like, he was just always bothering West. He was watching Video Village. He's learning. He's figuring out, like, okay, how do I make this leap from actor to director? So early on, Peter Berg definitely wanted to make this happen. They really didn't have an idea of who was going to play Horace Pinker, who is a serial killer that may or may not be our protagonist's dad, who is able to jump into the television and possess people. Again, it's a high concept thing. This is an 80s movie. This is definitely through and through. They found Mitch Pileggi, who ended up, he's on X-Files. He's been on a ton of stuff. He's got the shaved head. He's a pretty big guy. He's intimidating. And most importantly, he's doing a lot of stage acting in the Los Angeles area. They got wind of him. So they said, bring him in for a screen test. So they bring him in for the screen test. Wes Craven's associate producer was scared. Everybody in that room was like, oh my God, this guy is terrifying. Like, he's a big dude. He's selling it. So Wes Craven, he had seen like a couple of guys and he was like, that's it. Mitch Pileggi's the guy. He's like, this is our Horace Pinker. Universal was happy with him. They liked the way that he looked. And they said, well, there's going to be makeup on this guy. Is he going to be like, what's he going to be? Is he going to be electrocuted? And he's like, no, he's like, it's just going to be the actor. He's going to walk with a limp. And that's a funny story too, because they said, well, there's a scene in the movie where, let's just call him Shocker, where Shocker takes over a little girl's body and she walks with a very specific limp. Mitch Pileggi had to mimic the limp that the little girl did, and he's stuck doing the limp that she did, which is like, dragging your foot behind you. It's very uncomfortable, but it adds a little bit more nuance to the performance. Wes was like, I don't want to do makeup. I don't want to put this guy in a mask. He's scarier without the mask. He's able to emote. So Universal was like, all right, we'll leave you alone. We'll leave you alone. You're the master of horror. What do we know? We just make theme park rides, right? Okay. So they leave him alone. And he's able to pull this movie together quite nicely. Can I just say this again? Shocker was ahead of its time. I think the problem is that if you have Horace Pinker traveling through the TV, it gets a little too meta and a little too Deadpool. And I'm not sure the world was ready for that. They kind of were. Stuff like Who Framed Roger Rabbit is very self-aware of the world around it, even though it's this hodgepodge of animation and live action. I think you could have taken Horace Pinker, but the problem is it would have gotten too quippy. If we did have the budget and we did put him in Donna Reed, he would have been like, honey, I'm home, and then murdered somebody. And it would have just been like, all right, this is a Freddy Krueger knockoff. Wes, you can say whatever you want, but there's too many similarities. Horace Pinker would have eventually gone on, I think, to be too meta for its own good, if that makes any sense. So, come on. That's what he's trying to do. Universal wants a Freddy Krueger. Wes is trying to make a movie that'll kill Freddy off. That'll be like, oh, fuck Freddy, bro. We like Horace Pinker now. I find the name Horace Pinker, there's something about it that sounds like just, ooh, I don't know, it sounds like rape or something. Like the name just freaks me out. Horace Pinker. Oh, man. So Wes is really on this journey of making this smaller film, a more intimate film. He's got Peter Berg, who's a really good actor. They have one effects house that is in charge of all this stuff. And again, this is a $5 million budget movie in 1989, which by today would be about a $15 to $18 million movie. Still not a lot of money. It's not. You think $1 million is a lot of money, but if you have to make a whole movie on it, you go through that $1 million pretty quick. It's just the way it works, kids. Sorry. It's one of these deals. Wes Craven was trying to stretch that dollar so much, and he got a couple of different effects houses involved. It was one of those deals, much like you'll find out with the soundtrack, where they're like, hey, look, we want to work with Wes Craven. We're getting a shit budget. We can barely do this. A bunch of these effects artists had nervous breakdowns because when Wes Craven brought in what his ambitions were, they were like, we don't even know how to do this. We don't even know how to pull this off. It became a problem because, again, the grand ambition was too big. And they said, listen, we can't pull these effects off for what you're paying us. It's just not going to be possible. So he has to go back and he's rewriting the script and he's figuring out, all right, how can I do this for $5 million? And that becomes kind of the problem. The film is envisioned as this Horace Pinker character can travel through all these different ways with the TVs, with electricity. How do we make this, how do we put this in a visual sense for the audience? Wes Craven had to tame it back and say, all right, well, I have to get inventive. If we can't, it goes back to the Spielberg thing. If we can't show the shark, we have to create terror in other ways. There are many similarities to the original Nightmare on Elm Street with this film. Like the opening shot with Pinker working on his television set is very similar, almost identical, to Freddy making his glove in the beginning of A Nightmare on Elm Street. It's this character, it's our main villain. He's really our central protagonist or the antagonist, whatever you want to call Horace Pinker. In some eyes, he was a good guy. He's making his TV that's going to transform him, little does he know. He reminds me, his character, Horace Pinker, is kind of like the Sandman in the Spider-Man movies. I got that kind of vibe, except if the Sandman was not a tragic character, but a serial killer. In both movies, the protagonists have nightmares. Peter Berg's character, he's having nightmares all the time because he doesn't know his dad. He has this trauma, something he doesn't know what it is. And that's another aspect of this movie where you had somebody who had a really troubled childhood and they're able to just kind of bury it. They say that people who go through serious trauma, they're able to repress those things, especially if they happen as a kid. So he's having all these nightmares and he's dreaming about Horace Pinker. And Horace Pinker turns out to be real. What's crazy too is that the Horace Pinker character and Peter Berg's character, they both have fathers that are policemen. They're both hard asses. And it's so weird because generally with a horror villain, like you just get the monster, you don't get the background, especially in 89, it would just be a guy in a mask and they were fleshing that out. So there's kind of this duality between both our hero and villain. Also, in both movies, the protagonist's lover is murdered by the killer because that happens. His girlfriend gets killed by Horace Pinker. Just like, Johnny Depp gets killed, Nancy's boyfriend, in A Nightmare on Elm Street. So again, there's these real similarities between both movies. And I hate to say it, Wes, not to be a dick, but I don't know. Like, what are we doing now? So in both movies, the killer comes back from the dead. Obviously, Freddy's burned alive. Horace Pinker is sent to death row and he's shocked. They put him on the electric chair. Hence the name Shocker. And both of these killers come back from the dead or the unknown, whatever, and seek revenge on the people who killed them. So in this case, it's kind of the same thing. It's kind of the same movie. It's a bit of a detriment to the film, to be perfectly honest with you. I think the problem is, this is just the biggest problem, is that every time you get a little bit further into this movie, and it's a tight 90 minutes, it's good, you're just like, dude, this is A Nightmare on Elm Street. In so many levels, it's the other side. If you got two hands or you got two halves, it's the other half. It just seems like a retread. You've seen this before and maybe even done better and scarier. There was no stopping this. Universal paid, Wes Craven to take over these 4 pictures. come hell or high water, they were going to get their own Freddy Krueger. So the way that he was able to sell Universal as far as the marketing campaign and stuff was like, we're going to market this just like Freddy Krueger. We're just going to do this different version of it. I don't know. For the most part, they felt, hey, that'll work. Whatever, we'll put it together. The problem with this film, because we're also going to get into that, is that the marketing used Freddy Krueger a little too much. Like, we get it. We totally get it. We see what you're doing. This is that issue that I talk about when you have a movie, like let's say you're watching this movie and it's total shit, but they reference a better movie. Well, I'd rather just watch that better movie because, man, this sucks. Believe it or not, this movie comes in at 1 hour and 49 minutes. But I feel, again, this is just an offering standard that we have. If they could have done like 96 minutes on this movie, chef's kiss, would have been perfect. Because you would have been like, wait, what? Like, what just happened? And again, because he can travel through the TV, there becomes this dreamlike quality. And again, there were all these horrific kills that were planned. Once we get to like the late 80s, early 90s, the MPAA were just aware. Like, they know who. Wes Craven historically has had a beef since Last House on the Left, where the ratings board saw Last House on the Left and they were like, there's no fucking way you're releasing this. And he was like, okay. He turned into George Lucas and he went to Sean Cunningham, producer of Friday the 13th, who they worked together on Last House on the Left. They were like, we're just going to put it out. It's unrated. It's not, in some territories they were like, it's X, it's adults only, but it's like the comic code, the comic code authority. It was like, we're just going to release this without their blessing. It's just going to go independently. We're going to put it in the back of our car. We're going to distribute it however we can. And they never forgot about that because it was still that prick Jack Valenti that was in control. And he was like, oh yeah, Wes Craven, I remember you. You skated around us once, didn't you? Oh yeah, Nightmare on Elm Street. Oh yeah, fuck you. So Shocker would have been closer to a 2 hour and 12 minute movie. If Wes Craven had his way, it would have been a 2 hour and 12 minute movie because he wanted more gore. He wanted more there were a lot of boobs in this film originally. There was a lot of nudity and gratuitous stuff. There was a sequence where he goes into like a strip club or a peep show, something of that nature. They had to cut that. It sucks because they didn't keep like the negatives of this stuff. They were just like, it's trash, throw it in the garbage. No one will ever care. But yeah, we do care. All these years later, we want to see these kills. We want to see these boobs. We've never seen them before. They're new to us. Yeah. So this movie really did get neutered by the MPAA. It's also neutered by the fact that it's a Nightmare on Elm Street. I watched the movie last night, and I will say this. It's one of Wes Craven's slickest movies. The editing is very influenced by music videos, and it's apparent. Again, because it was created in tandem with the soundtrack. That was part of because Universal MCA Records, which also, fun fact, this was the last film to have Universal MCA. This is when everything just went Universal and they dissolved that part of the corporation. It becomes one of these movies where we're going to market a soundtrack and we're going to build it around it and we're going to make this very MTV. And it shows. If you watch the editing, you watch the shots that he takes. On a technical level, it's one of Craven's best films. Like the cinematography and everything, the transitions, the way that it's been edited, it really works. It's a slick movie. It's almost as if they said, okay, would you like some more money and creative control and remake Nightmare on Elm Street? Because that's kind of what he's doing. That's exactly what he's doing. He's saying, okay, what were the things that I didn't explore that if I had the money, I had the control, I could do? And Shocker becomes a weird kind of quasi-spiritual sequel to A Nightmare on Elm Street. Now, we have told you about this season, the franchise non-starters. This is a franchise non-starter. Absolutely. They had talked about very early on, they were like, well, if Shocker performs well, he could go in, again, here we go, 1989, he can go into the world of the classic Universal monsters. And I'm like, please don't do this. I'm like, whatever you do, don't green screen, because the technology wasn't there to do what they do now. So it would have been like Horace Pinker green screened with like Bela Lugosi, and that would have just been terrible. You shoot everything from opposite angles, but in black and white. He's slapping Dracula in the back of the head. He's like, oh, come on, fang face. And that's the thing, like the Horace Pinker character like skirts this fine line where it's like, Is he scary, or is he Deadpool? Is he quippy? Are we just going to be quipping up this whole movie? In my personal opinion, Wes Craven should have embraced a little bit more of that silliness and made him more over the top, because this character is built like that. Horace Pinker is a serial killer. Yeah, sure, he kills people, but he's not a child murderer and a child rapist as like Freddy originally was, and they kind of like, oh, we don't like that. We're just going to get rid of that child rape thing. It doesn't work for us. So with that being said, just embrace it. Embrace the humor. Stick him on the Brady Bunch. Do whatever the hell you want. Put him in these worlds. Let him quip. But the budget wasn't there, and I think that was a lot of it was going to be this weird subtext on television. You know, what are the effects of TV? How can this character travel? Can he travel through the news? Can he travel through sitcoms? Can he go on an old cop show? And that kind of would have been the thing, like where it's just Horace Pinker, you know, almost like a multiverse. Like he's going through the TV shows, he's going through the movies, the news. And I think that's an interesting movie. But he didn't have the budget for it, so we only kind of hinted at what that was going to be. Ultimately, he turned the movie in. He didn't even spend the $5 million. He came in at like 4.2. Cool for Wes Craven, because studios like that. One thing people always said about like Sylvester Stallone, he generally always turned in films on time. And that's a big thing. Sometimes you went over budget, but if you go under budget and you give the studio what they want on time, they'll be your buddy, because you're a part of the program. They need product. You've created the product, the end. So they decided that this was going to be, originally, this was supposed to be a big summer film. They thought Shocker was going to be like, this is the new Nightmare on Elm Street. Much like Universal thought the same thing with Van Helsing. They were like, oh, this is going to be our new thing. We're going to make 10 of these. We're going to make 10 of them. So they started writing a sequel immediately. And they said, well, let's put it out in July. They ended up canceling the July release because Batman was coming out. I think it was June 23rd. And they were like, we want no part of that because we know that it's probably going to be a big hit. So smartly, and this is like, I don't know why more studios don't do this. To this day, we have this problem. They released it October 27th, 1989. And that's like the perfect time. If you've got a horror movie to sell and you're telling me this is just as scary as Nightmare on Elm Street, well then why aren't we releasing it around Halloween? That's like the perfect time. But sometimes these studios, they make these decisions. Back in those days, again, we've talked about Halloween as like this huge holiday now, and it's constantly evolving and becoming bigger and bigger. This was at a time when people used to just celebrate Halloween. There wasn't animatronics at Lowe's. There wasn't all this stuff, and you just celebrated Halloween and you went trick-or-treating. It was a couple of days out of the month, you know? Now it's we start in August, we end by Thanksgiving, we can give up Halloween a little bit. It's a crazy thing. So this movie comes out October 27th. And the budget is $5 million estimated. Opening weekend in US and Canada, it did $4.5 million. Worldwide, $16 million. Now look, hey, they probably spent $5 million marketing it. So they made like $6 million. You spend $5 on the movie, $5 on marketing. It's not bad. But where this movie was really shocking was, once again, because this is why Carpenter gave up the contract and they wanted Craven, it made $43 million on VHS. It was like one of the top 20 rentals of 1989, which is just insane. It did gangbusters on video. For whatever reason, most people stayed away from it in theaters. It kind of just got swept under the rug. People were like, oh, it's, you know, this is kind of what it is. It's a, you know, a Nightmare on Elm Street thing.
We'll be right back with more of The Offering with Jerry Horror.
Knows Best Candles is a soy wax candle company owned by two Long Island natives turned Manhattanites. They hand pour small batches of cheeky candles that inspire the euphoric feeling of synesthesia. They've got diffusers, room sprays, bundles, and gift cards are always available as well. Each Knows Best candle pairs an enchanting dual fragrance with a curated Spotify playlist to help set your mood at home. Not to mention, the names of the candles are a conversation starter themselves. Bestsellers include Safe Word, Midday Nap, and my personal favorite, Bitch Goddess. The perfect scents to burn while listening to your favorite podcast. That's right, The Offering. Remember to use promo code JerryHorror20 to automatically save 20% off your order. Stop paying for overpriced basic bitch candles. Spoil yourself or your loved ones with Knows Best candles. Woo, spicy! The Killer Cook Barbecue Sauce and Dry Rub Company was founded on the basis of bringing global flavors to the American palate. Handcrafted barbecue sauces made from nostalgic sodas, based out of Port Jefferson, New York, Killer Cook will bring the unexpected out of the familiar in food, creating exciting flavor combinations, resulting in food that is so delicious, it's deadly. I'm reading some reviews now on their website. Here's a few that caught my eye. My man's brisket is amazing, but the rub, wow. That's the Killer Cook's Lower East Side brisket rub getting a 5-star review. Here's another one. Brought this in from my brother who loves to cook. He's also a big Mortal Kombat fan. I know he's gonna find it as funny as I did, and the flavor sounds right up his alley as well. Another 5-star review from the Chow Chan Rub, the biggest, baddest flavor boss of all the realms. And finally, here's the 5-star review for the Killer Cook's Passport to Flavor gift set. Absolutely love the product. Joy is very pleasant to work with. The product is beautifully packaged. Couldn't have asked for better service. Guys, globally inspired dry rub collection, chef crafted in small batches. Salts, sugars, seasonings, barbecue sauce, and soda shop. All killer, folks. No filler. Visit thekillercook.com to spice up your basic bitch barbecue. Listeners and fans of The Offering can get their hands on their very own The Offering with Jerry Horror merch, now only at TeePublic. Find your own fresh The Offering with Jerry Horror high-quality merchandise, including t-shirts, hoodies, tank tops, long sleeves, stickers, and mugs. Just like the show, we've got gear that's mostly horror, always genre. The Offering with Jerry Horror TeePublic store has everything you need to represent your favorite podcast. Folks, head on over to teepublic.com right now and pick up your very own Offering tee today. You're listening to The Offering with Jerry Horror. Got a question or a story you want to share with me? It might be featured in a future episode. Email me at jerryhorror@gmail.com or hit me up on Twitter at jerryhorror. I'm also on Instagram. You can find me there at jerryhorror. Rate and review this show on Apple Podcast, and you might find your review in an upcoming episode. And if you haven't already, be sure to subscribe to The Offering. Now back to the show. Smartly, early on, as far as the soundtrack, because that's 90% of the warm, fuzzy feelings for this movie come from the soundtrack. They went to Kiss, Paul Stanley, and they said, hey, can you put together like the Avengers of metal? Can you get like as many metal bands, and we're going to just put this on Headbangers Ball, and we're going to have a tie-in. And they tried to get Horace Pinker and Mitch Pileggi on Headbangers Ball to promote it, but Headbangers Ball was like, nah. They were like, we didn't like Shocker, so we're not going to do that. So this soundtrack, you've got the Dudes of Wrath with the song Shocker, which was just a bunch of different studio musicians like rapping and doing like, come on, it was 1989. That's what we were doing at the time. You got Love Transfusion by Iggy Pop. You've got the big title track, which is No More Mr. Nice Guy. That's Megadeth, obviously. That's the Alice Cooper song. And it was crazy because when Megadeth had Peace Sells, I think Alice Cooper had Constrictor at that time. That was a record. So Megadeth was opening for Alice Cooper. So they went to Alice like, hey, can we remake the song? He's like, of course. Alice Cooper was like, yes, you guys are my opening band. I like you guys. Like, go ahead, remake the song. I don't give a shit. He's another like John Carpenter. He's like, I'm going to go golfing. You guys call me when you need me to chop a head off or something. You had Sword and Stone by Bonfire, Timeless Love by Soraya, Shock Dance, again, the Dudes of Wrath. This is a bunch of studio musicians. Paul Stanley's on a couple of those tracks. He's doing the backing guitars and stuff. You got Demon Bell, which was another big song off of this by Dangerous Toys. I like Dangerous Toys. I always thought they were good. You got The Awakening by Voodoo X, kind of a deep cut. Different Breed by Dead On. And then we have the Shocker Reprise, again, by the Dudes of Wrath. But if you listen to these songs, they're goofy. It's like, Shocker, Horace Pinker coming to kill you. It's very like telling you what's going on in the movie. It's like, Shocker, he was a serial killer. Now he can transform into the TV. And it just became like, oh, fuck, what are we doing? Now, little dumb fat kid Jerry, I had my little fat kid shorts on, and it was the late summer, going back to school, and I really wanted that Shocker cassette. So there was this Sam Goody that was over by my grandmother's house, and I decided, I guess at this point, I'm probably like 11, 10 years old, 12, I don't remember. Who the fuck knows? Who cares? I'm a dumb little kid. I got my fat kid shorts on. I'm like, yeah. I got my Batman shirt. I'm like, yeah. Can we go to McDonald's? That's a little fat kid me telling you we want to go to McDonald's. So I'm going to go look at CDs and stuff. And I go into the store, and of course, they're playing the music video, you know, No More Mr. Nice Guy, Megadeth. Wow, all these metal guys are so cool. And I mean, I love everything. I love hip-hop, I love dance, I love pop. But at the time, it was like that real cool heavy metal thing, you know? Guns N' Roses, it just came out. Everybody wants to be a metal guy. In 3 years, no one wants to be a metal guy. They want to be Nirvana. But that's just the way the world works. Get over it. I'm like, how much is this cassette? I'm looking at the Shocker cassette. I'm like, wow, $12.99. I do not have $12.99 in my pocket. This is going to be a problem. So for this was like my first serious crime. They used to put the cassettes in these big plastic things so that people wouldn't steal them, but that was the opposite of what was happening. And I have to go hide behind one of these racks in Sam Goody and try to squeeze this cassette out of the plastic casing. So I'm like pushing on it, pressing on it. How the fuck do I get this thing out? So I'm pressing to try to manipulate the plastic thing. I cracked the cassette. I'm like, fuck, well, this is going to be terrible now. I've got a cracked cassette case. It'll be $12 to replace that cassette case. Everything was expensive back in the day. It's like, oh, you want to replace this? It's $86. So I'm starting to mangle this thing. There's a dude who's working there, and he is the largest black man I've ever seen. Not just like big, like he's like muscular, and I'm like, who the fuck is this guy? When did they hire this guy? He's like a bouncer. So I'm hiding behind the racks. I take a t-shirt, you know, I used to have like the section of like t-shirts, and I'm putting the thing in there and trying to crack it. I destroy this cassette. It's broken. I break the cassette, I break the thing, and it's made a ton of noise. And I'm pretty sure that this dude who works here, he knows what's happening. He's coming my way, and I just dump the cassette behind a bunch of like bins, and he's like, do you need help? And I'm like, I sure do. No, I don't know. Do you need help? I was so terrified. I'm like, this is it. I'm going to jail. Little fat kid in his shorts is going to jail. This is going to be terrible. We're not going to McDonald's after this. I think my father would have probably beaten me to death. I know that this, now being older, I know that he knew. He knew I was trying to steal it. So he's like, do you know what you're going to buy? Let's see, you've got $5 on me. Yeah. So basically what happens in this situation is he's forcing me to buy something because he knows that I probably tried to steal, you know, and he's probably telling his friends, like he was getting drunk with his friends. He's like, I made this little fat kid. I made him do this shit. It's crazy. This dumb little fat. He bought it. So I go over and I'm like, Casingles. Yeah, that's the ticket. That's more like you get a good Casingle for 99 cents. I needed to get the fuck out of that store. That's basically, I need to get out of this store and I need to purchase something. And he's watching me. He's just standing there like grilling me. And I'm just like, oh man. I'm like, when are the cops going to come? I'm going to jail. I'm like, all right, got to find something. I'm like, Bobby Brown, my prerogative. Fine. That's coming home. It's $2.99. I've got the money. So he's like, you're a fan of Bobby Brown? I'm like, yeah, I really like New Edition. He was like shocked at that. He's like, you like New Edition? I was like, yeah, I'm like, I like all those things. He's like, oh, well, all right. Now he's being friendly to me, you know, because maybe he was a fan of Bobby Brown. He's like, oh, this kid's got good taste. He's, you know, my prerogative. Da-na-na-na-na. So I buy the cassette, obviously, and I almost pissed myself. That record comes out next week. Why don't you stop by and pick it up? And I'm like, no. Yeah, sure. Of course. I'll be here next week. I never went to that Sam Goody ever again because I was convinced that they knew that I was a thief at this point. Even though I didn't steal anything, I tried. I did my darndest. And that's my big connection to Shocker, like trying to steal the soundtrack. My cousins took me to see this movie because you always had older cousins. You take you to R-rated movie. It was the 80s. This is what we did. I liked it just fine. I think that the stark imagery, the music video cuts, the tie-in with Megadeth, That's why this film is just so looked back fondly, because it's not about the movie necessarily. It's about time and place. And it's always time and place. Where were you? What were you doing? And if you grew up with this film, well, you remember the soundtrack fondly. Guys, I tried. I tried to look for some crazy stories for this movie. I tried to go back and see what it was, but Wes Craven got his, $5 million. He went, he made this movie. Everybody ostensibly was very happy with how it went down. Craven always offered his actors creative freedom, but the movie did turn a profit. And ultimately, Universal Studios, he even said, why don't we do another one? And this was another situation, just like Van Helsing was like, we made our money back. I don't think there's going to be a Shocker 2. But there was a script. And I told you, the script was him just trapped in cable television and just going through all the channels. And the movie would have been focused. And this is why the sequel sounds more interesting to me. The movie didn't have a hero. There was really no hero in the movie. The movie was just Horace Pinker traveling through the channels. And it would have been called Shocker 2 Channel Surfing. But for whatever reason, to this day, I don't know why they did it. They could have gone direct to video with it. They could have done something interesting. I think that Universal was afraid to sink the money into the special effects for what they were going to get. They still turned almost a $50 million profit off this movie. But I think they looked at it as a lark and they said, well, we've got 3 more pictures from Wes Craven. So who cares? Does it really matter? We'll just make another movie and it'll make the same money. And unfortunately, that's always the problem with Hollywood, because creatives don't run Hollywood anymore. Bean counters run Hollywood. And what they say is they're like, well, we have a formula. And if a Wes Craven movie makes X amount of money, we will continue to rinse and repeat that formula until it doesn't work. And you have to understand that. There's people always come up to me and they say, oh, well, how come they keep making sequels? How come? I say, because it makes money. I'm like, once something doesn't make money, critics can hate it. People can say whatever they want to say, but money talks. If that movie performs, you'll get 10 sequels. But ultimately, we live in a world where we got one Shocker. And that's it. You got to deal with it, all right? I don't even know, because now it's like the other day I was showing a kid a telephone. And there was a little kid who came to my job and we still have a payphone. They're tearing it out next week. And he says, what's that? And I said, it's a phone. Phone? He had a cell phone. He's like, this is a phone. He holds it up. I said, pick it up and listen. I'm like, I had to show him how to pick up the phone. And I said, you listen here, you talk here. And he goes, well, can I make a call? And I said, yeah, is there a dial tone? And he goes, what's a dial tone? And I'm like, all right, that's it. I'm like, this kid knows nothing. But he's a little kid. He doesn't know. But that's why if you're watching Shocker, you're like, there's cable boxes, there's all these things, there's big tube TVs. Kids don't have a frame of reference. They kind of understand, like, oh, that's a TV, that's this. But it's a different world. Shocker is made in this pre-digital world, and I don't know, again, where he is going into the sitcoms and things of that nature. Like, we used to watch Nick at Night. That was a big thing. We watched all the old shows because it was cheap programming, and you would see all the reruns. Kids they watch new stuff. They don't watch reruns. Like, most kids, I've seen every episode of The Brady Bunch. How? I don't know. Saved by the Bell. I've seen every episode. Kids don't. They stream. And you know what? If they don't like it, they just don't watch it. When we were kids, we were being held hostage by whatever the network was showing. Maybe it was better. Maybe it was worse. I can't make any sense of that. It's really up to you whether you think terrestrial television was better. I don't know. I don't think it was. Hey, kids, you know what time it is? It's time for some unhinged reviews. That's right. This one comes from Poetry Flow off of Amazon. 2 stars out of 5. Title, Deeply Flawed. You ready? This is the body. Hang in there. All stink and no pink. Well, his name is Horace Pinker. I think it's something my mom would say. Well, his name is Horace. That's fucked up, man. And I don't even know how Amazon let him post that. It's kind of like, kind of dirty. All stink and no. So yeah, there's no effing in this. I don't know what that means. It's a disgusting review. It really is. It's deplorable. Well, don't you worry, folks, because I found another one. And this one is from our friend Johnny Bottom. 1 star out of 5. The title for this one is Entertainment for the Retarded. I swear to God, I think my IQ dropped by 20 points watching this crap. I just rewatched it today. I haven't seen it since it was released on VHS way back when. My God, what a dumb movie. Before he goes to the electric chair, Horace requests a TV in his cell. Okay, where did he get the jumper cables, black candles, and the huge books from? And it just got worse from there. Wow, okay. So dropped an R-bomb, opened that fucker up. Wow, okay, Johnny Bottom. That's I guess like Johnny Rotten or Johnny Drama, like Johnny Bottom. Oh, okay. All right, hey, it works, you know. You got a fan base, you do you. You know, who am I to judge? You know, I'm just some guy. I can't make sense of this film. I really can't. It's a nightmare. Wes Craven took his most successful IP and he ripped it off. That's kind of what he did. Did he execute it well? Yes. But the problem is that you're constantly thinking about, wow, this does feel like a Nightmare on Elm Street film. That's the real promise of this movie. Because Horace Pinker would have been if you wanted to do a Freddy versus Jason thing, Horace Pinker versus Freddy Krueger, that could be an interesting movie. You know, where like Horace Pinker pulls Freddy Krueger into the TV world, he pulls him into the dreams, we go back and forth, you don't know what reality, are you dreaming, are you in the TV world? All right, now we're playing with something. But that was never going to happen because of everything that went down at New Line. Now eventually, Bob Shea and Wes Craven get back together, and they said, look, let's get the band back together. After Freddy's dead, we mismanaged this character, so let's do a new Nightmare. And they made that. It was successful and it was good. So the story has a happy ending. I mean, it worked out for Wes. He gets a little bit of control. And now, presently, what's most important, as of the recording of this, Wes Craven's children are shopping the Nightmare on Elm Street property. They're trying to figure out, how do we bring Freddy back? And I think that's the moral of the story here. Horace Pinker, shocker, was created to bring Freddy back, just in a different IP, a different form. And it doesn't work. So we go back to it. You tried to make this thing to kill your creation, but you can't. Once the fans have it and it's in their heart and their soul and they love it and they're obsessed with it, it's done. I've got a Freddy Krueger tattoo. I don't have a Horace Pinker tattoo. Why? I don't know. We'll figure it out someday, but it just, I don't know. Revisiting it all these years later, I have more nostalgia for the time and everything that was going on in my life than the actual movie. And I think that's a lot of what goes into that. When we do look back at these things, we're reminded of the people that were in our lives. Going back to my grandmother's house after trying to steal that cassette. That was weird. She's like, oh, did you have fun? I'm like, oh. I'm waiting for that big dude from Sam Goody to bust in the house and be like, he tried to take a thing in the shaka, 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 shaka. Yeah. I don't know, man. You ever try to steal a cassette? Let me know. You know, we got social media. Hey, did I tell you we have an X account? The Offering, WJH. Hit us up on Instagram, @JerryHorror. You can find us at TeePublic. Oh, man, we got fantastic t-shirts. Seriously, buy a t-shirt. Things are expensive, man. I know. I can't even afford to go to McDonald's, but if you buy a t-shirt, whoa, hey, maybe that's a Big Mac for old Jerry. I don't know. You know, it's something. It's a little something, which is more than Shocker was. Jesus. Yeah, don't forget, you can find us on YouTube. Don't forget to subscribe, like the videos, leave a review on Apple. Hey, look, any way that you can help us, if you have a friend that's like, I'm looking for something that's, you know, I can go back in time, learn a couple of things, have some nostalgia for these films that we grew up with and love so much, tell them about us. Go ahead. Share it. You know, maybe you got a friend who listens to Spotify. Say, hey, I'm going to recommend this to you. Because I appreciate that stuff. There's no marketing budget behind The Offering. Like, we do this, and it's just, we're just normal guys. We're just normal people making a show, putting it out there. And we love what we do. And hopefully, if you enjoy the show, you show a little bit of that love back and share it. That's it, folks. Hey, listen, I hope you're enjoying spooky season. You know, go out. Have the pumpkin spice latte. Go have the fun size candy. Live it up. Listen to the Shocker soundtrack. Do whatever. Get weird. I don't know. That's on you. I'm Jerry Horror. This has been The Offering. Mostly horror, always genre. You've been listening to The Offering with Jerry Horror, produced by Pete Bune. If you have a question or story you want to share with me, we'd love to hear from you. You can email me at theofferingwithjerryhorror@gmail.com, or hit us up on Twitter at theofferingwjh, or hit me up on the Instagram at Jerry Horror. You get the picture? Subscribe to Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you find your favorite podcast. Join us next time for another offering.
This has been a Sick Boy Wolfgang production. Thank you for listening.